Hello everyone, and welcome to Neosystems webinar, GovCardConnect, Accepting Credit Card Payments in Deltek Costpoint. My name is Brian Giblin. A little bit of logistics for today. If you have a question, we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So if you have a question, just type your question in the question box, and we'll be sure to get to it at the end.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound.
Sorry for that brief delay. Our agenda today, we'll do a brief introduction, and then we will cover the purchase card spending. Then we're going to look at some of the challenges in accepting government charge cards. Then we're going to look at the solution, GovCardConnect, follow that up with a brief demo, get some of the benefits, and then open it up to your questions. For our brief introduction, at Neosystems, we like to say, grow ahead, we've got your back office. Neosystems provides strategic back office services. These include accounting, HR, and IT. And forming an umbrella over these services, we also offer consulting, including implementations, upgrades, business process reviews. At Neosystems, we are the largest Deltek partner in doing upgrades of Costpoint 7. We've completed or have in process over 50 upgrades to Costpoint 7. We also host Deltek and other applications in our secure private cloud. We're hosting 450 companies with over 27,500 employees using applications like Costpoint, Time and Expense. And through our experience working with government contractors like you, we've developed some insights, talking with you, looking at the government, talking with government employees, and we've noticed a trend in the need for charge cards, the use of charge cards, and how that's helping them with their federal strategic sourcing initiative. In fiscal year 12, the government made purchases of goods and services of over $18 billion using the GSA SmartPay purchase card. And you might think that these are a lot of small purchases, and that's a bulk of them are, but it's interesting to point out that over $4 billion of those purchases were over $10,000 each. Agencies like Veteran Affairs, Department of Defense, even Department of Justice, Health and Human Services comes in at $500 million, Department of Homeland Security $500 million, but $500 million here, $500 million there. Pretty soon we're talking real money. And there's close to 300,000 government employees who are cardholders of the SmartPay purchase card. These people are empowered to make purchases immediately with their card, no contract required. So let's take a look at some of those transactions. As I mentioned, about 20 million transactions in fiscal year 12. A lot of them were the micro purchases, those purchases that are under $3,000. For those purchases, no contract is required. The SmartPay purchase card becomes the contractual mechanism. For those larger purchases, the $4 billion that I mentioned earlier, you do require a contract for those, but the charge card is the commitment mechanism and the payment mechanism. There's no purchase order required for those. And typically those are incorporated on your contracts. If you look on your GSA contracts, you'll see a line that says accepts credit cards, yes or no. Accepts credit cards for large purchases, yes or no. These are part of your contracts which could be negotiated, and GSA is going to be looking to include that in future contracts and when contracts are up for renewal. because GSA is looking to expand the SmartPay program. $18 billion, that represents about 3.5% of contractual spend. They're looking to drive that to $60 billion, or 11% of contractual spend. And how are they doing this? They're looking at going out to the various agencies and talking to them about how are they looking at their accounts payable, reviewing it, what could be purchased on a purchase card now that hasn't been. They're also looking at grant funding. The government provides grants to various organizations. Well, instead of just sending them the money, what they're doing is they're giving them a purchase card which has a decreasing limit on it, so a decreasing balance on it. So the grantee uses the card to make their purchases. That information gets back to the government, providing more transparency, more accountability of how those government dollars are being expensed. They're also looking at recurring expenses. In our conversation with the Office of Charge Card Management, one of the things that came up was that recurring expenses are actually rather cumbersome for the government. They have to keep sending out invoices, and that's administrative expense for them. So by using recurring expenses on a purchase card, it saves them that administrative expense. They're also rolling it out more on blanket purchase agreements, the BPAs. They're going to put this onto more and more GSA schedules. Their goal is to put it on 5 GSA schedules per year for the next 3 years. And why? Because they're looking at their refunds, net refunds. You may be, you have credit cards. You may have a rewards program. You may have even reward dollars. Well, the government has a similar program in place. They get dollars back for dollars they spend. Last year, they got $305 million in net refunds. They also saved about $1.5 billion in administrative expenses. So they want to continue to grow this program. And if they can grow it to $60 billion, they're going to get roughly $1 billion back in net refunds. This is money that can go out to the agencies to help them fund their mission. And it's not just the federal government. The state and local governments are looking to get in on this game, and they're following the federal lead. We talked about the federal spend of $500 to $600 billion. Well, the state and local governments, by one estimate, is about $2 trillion in spending. And Virginia is a leader in the adoption of purchase cards. They've built a portal for their vendors. Close to 80,000 vendors are in this portal. 36,000 of them are accepting credit cards and charge cards. Virginia's also gone to the GSA and said, hey, we'd like to put your GSA schedules on here so we can take advantage of all those discounts that you've already negotiated. In addition, they've opened up their portal to all the local governments, the public entities, your libraries, your state universities, 245 organizations. And what that's doing is it's increasing Virginia's buying power so that they can drive prices down and save money. So you'd think with this, everybody would be accepting charge cards. State and local governments are wanting to pay with them. The federal government wants to pay. So this would be a good time for us to learn a little bit about you. Are you accepting credit cards as a form of payment today? If you answer the poll, some of you, maybe you're not processing. Maybe some of you are going at a light usage, 1 to 10 transactions a month. And that presents its own little challenges as you try to have this thing that's sort of an interruption of your normal processes. Some of you are more heavy users. Some of you are doing over 100 transactions a month. So as we take a look at our poll, give you a few more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, close the poll. Let's have a look at those results. Interesting. So some of you are not processing today and not accepting credit cards as a form of payment, and that's understandable, and we'll get into some of those challenges. And then some of you, roughly 50% of you, are doing 1 to 10 transactions a month. Interesting, and we'll get into some of those challenges as well. So let's talk about those challenges. I'm sure you're going to agree with a lot of these. One is you have the security of the credit card information, that PCI compliance. Then also now the federal government is requiring more data. They're requiring what's called level 3 data. And also a lot of the current solutions, the current ways of doing business, if you're going to supply that level 3 data, it means rekeying the invoice data. And when your payment comes in, we're looking at manual bank reconciliation, trying to tie out your bank deposits to your transactions back to your accounts receivable. And let's not kid ourselves. The transaction fee, that hits the bottom line. You know, the government contractors don't have large profit margins, and these credit card fees really hit the bottom line. Now, we could do a whole session on PCI compliance, and we still wouldn't supply you with all the information you need on it. So very briefly, though, I'm going to see if I can get Ann to help me out here. Ann, you have a credit card, right?
Yes, I do.
Great. And would you mind reading your name off of your credit card to us?
This is Anne Marie Ibrahim.
And would you mind sharing your credit card number with us?
Absolutely not.
What a surprise. Okay, let's accept that you haven't told us your credit card number now. And would you be willing to share your expiration date?
Sure. It's 7/17.
Okay. And how about the CVV2, the card validation and verification number?
Sure, it's 484.
Okay. So here's what we've done. You know, it's that credit card data. If you have the credit card number and everything around it is sensitive. But without that credit card number, who cares? Expiration date, it's just a date. It could be anything. It's meaningless information. So when you have credit card information, you have a credit card number, if you've written it down, accepted a fact, that is highly sensitive data. It needs to be locked up and held secure. If you have it in a system, it needs to be encrypted at rest and in transmission. Now, I think we've illustrated the point that but if you don't have that information, just having Ann's name doesn't really tell us anything. That data is not sensitive. So that's, you know, in a nutshell, how PCI compliance works. If you don't have that credit card number, you don't have as much to worry about. If you do, you've got a lot to worry about. And I mentioned the level 3 credit card data. Credit card transactions include the level 1 data, you know, what's the person's name, the level and the credit card number. The level 2 starts, this is for card not present. This is what typically happens when you do a credit card transaction over the internet. This is where you get into putting in that card verification number, those 3 digits or 4 digits on an American Express. But now the government wants that level 3 data. What really is the big challenge with it is the line item details. What are you shipping, selling? What service did you provide? So they want the part number. They want a description, the quantity, the unit of measure, the unit cost. There's about 12 fields that they want. This is just a partial list. And they also want the ship to zip and the ship from zip and the ship to country. All these data, which if you have to enter them again, because we know you entered them in Costpoint or whatever your accounting system is. So if you've entered them once, then to have to enter them again can be rather tedious and time-consuming. And let's talk a little bit about that transaction fee. You know, small purchase, let's walk through $100. You know, everybody takes their cut. Even the government agency gets their kickback at the end. And so your $100 might end up to be $96.50. And while I can see that, you know, some of you accept a few credit card transactions a month, you're probably saying, okay, a few transactions, we can afford it. But if you started doing $1 million a year, you're looking at $35,000 in transaction fees. And that's a significant amount to hit your bottom line. So we took a step back and we said, all right, how should this problem be solved? So we started with Costpoint 7 in the center. And we made a couple of requirements. No PCI data in Costpoint. Second requirement, Costpoint could be hosted anywhere. You could have it on your premises. you could host it with us. And if for some crazy reason, you could host it elsewhere. But we hope you host it with us. Then we've connected it to GovCardConnect so that customer information could be imported from Costpoint into GovCardConnect. The invoice data could be pulled in through using web services. So you would not need to rekey that data, and all those data would be up to date and correct. So when you go to do a transaction, we connect to CardConnect, our partner. CardConnect is where the credit card information is stored. That's where the PCI data resides. It's in their secure vault, encrypted and protected. What they do is they pass us back a token so that we can store that and use that for future reference. They go out to First Data, get the authorization for the transaction, and report back to us so that we can complete you can complete the transaction. They also then, in a day or two, typical for a card transaction, the monies that you are due are deposited into your bank account. We get that deposit data, we bring it back, and we match it up. We match it up to the transaction, and we match it up to your invoice so that cash receipts, managed cash receipts, can be handled quickly and efficiently. And I'm going to show you a demo on that just a little bit. And because we're using the level 3 data, the transaction fees are lower. So instead of a 3.5% transaction fee, we're looking at about a 2.5% transaction fee. Now, I mentioned CardConnect, and they're our partner in this, and they've got over 50,000 companies that they serve, and a lot of them Fortune 500 companies, and I would like to highlight that one of their clients is the Social Security Administration. Now, we talked a little bit about those transaction fees, but I want to go a little bit further in depth on there so you can get some good understanding of a transaction fee is made up of essentially two pieces, the acquisition fee plus the interchange fee. The interchange fee going off to Visa, and they handle it from there. But then you have your acquiring bank. If you're the government contractor accepting credit card fees, you have a relationship with a bank and at the acquiring bank, and they take out a slice called the acquisition fee. So combined, that makes your total transaction fee. Now, what drives the interchange fee? Because that's the part that you can't control directly. It's your merchant category code, which I'll explain, and then how the transaction was processed. An important part of this is the level 3. Level 3 transactions will get the lowest rate possible. And then in addition, you have card types. But that doesn't come into effect so much with government contractors and purchase cards. But in everyday use, if it was you have a rewards card or something like that, they have different interchange fees associated with them. And you might negotiate your lowest possible rate, but you do need to be concerned about being impacted by downgrades. If you don't supply all the information and the fee is, and the transaction is downgraded, you'll get hit and you'll pay a larger fee, transaction fee for those transactions. So it's important, whoever you're working with for your acquiring bank, that they have an interchange optimization program. They're looking at your transactions and saying to you, you know, we've noticed that a group of your transactions are not qualifying for the lowest rate, and the reason is you're missing these data. They should be doing that proactively. It shouldn't be you calling up and saying, why are my credit card fees so high? They should be calling you to point this out. So as you're looking at, for those of you who don't accept today and you're looking to accept credit cards as a form of payment, ask about things like, do you have an interchange optimization program? How does it work? That's one of your tips for your best practices. And then we want to look at that merchant category code. And this is a 4-digit number. It's used by the banking industry, And there's over 600 of them. And they're everything from computer programming to computer software sales. And you want to make sure you have something that matches what you're selling. Because if it's wrong, it can get your sale blocked. Now, some of you I know do services and products. And you say, well, what should I do? Should I do computer software sales or computer programming? Which one would be best for me? And that's fine. You can really pick either one. Recommendation would be just go with the one that's the higher percentage of your business. Go with that. It'll be fine. That's not going to ever get you blocked. But you do want to be careful not to get too general. And what I mean by too general is there was a company that picked, they had gone down to their local bank and got set up. And unfortunately, they didn't, their local bank didn't understand a government contractor using credit cards. They were looking more at, they're used to coffee shops and normal retail. So they didn't know what category code to put them in. So they said, oh, let's just go with general merchandise. Sounds good. Unfortunately, some government agencies, specifically the U.S. Post Office, will not accept a transaction from a merchant category code of general merchandise. It got blocked. So these are things you really need to make sure you're working with somebody who understands government contracting and government agencies and their use of the SmartPay card. Now, I was talking about those interchange rates, and there's a lot of detail here, but one of the things I want to highlight into is on those small transactions, when you're supplying the level 3 data, on those small transactions, you can be qualified for an interchange rate of roughly 2%. You add on an acquiring fee, and that's how they get down to roughly a fee of 2.5%. You might be able to do better, but I like to be a little bit conservative, so I'd say 2.5% is a good rate to get on a small transaction when you're supplying level 3 data. And something really interesting, back in October, some new interchange rates came out. Actually, what they did was they extended an interchange rate from the Visa Large Purchase Advantage rate. They extended that to apply to the GSA purchase cards. And take a look at those rates. With those rates, when you're looking at purchases, if you're looking at a very large purchase, say $20,000 or even $100,000, you can start looking at rates of 1 to 1.5%. They're achievable. And when you look at 1.5%, and you start thinking about, well, I'm going to get paid in 1 to 2 days, money in the bank, versus 30 days, or as some of you tell me, even more, if I'm waiting for money from an invoice. You take into account the cost of money over time, and credit card transactions become a lot more compelling. So now we've got to see what we can do about getting rid of some of the administrative angst and effort that it requires of you. So before we move on, I want to get into the demo. I'd like to do a poll and see which systems you're on. How many of you are using Costpoint 6, Service Pack 2? How many of you are on Costpoint 7 or 701? Are you using Oracle, SAP? If you have another system that you're using, if you would just write in the box, in your question box, just write the system in there. That would be wonderful. Appreciate it. And just want to get some insight into what systems you're using. Yeah, let's see the results. Okay, so about 50% of you are on Costpoint 6. And yep, just a little reminder to you that Costpoint 6 goes into sustaining support in April of 2014. And we got Costpoint 7, 38%. So when I do the demo, I'm going to be showing you Costpoint 7. And so for you in Costpoint 6, this will look a little different. hopefully those of you in Costpoint 7, this will look very, very familiar. Okay, so first, if we could turn it over to me. So, welcome to GovCardConnect. I'm just going to log in. This is all done through web services. If I could type. So we are going out over the internet right now. Oh, I mistyped. So we come into GovCardConnect. These are some deposits that are waiting for to be reconciled, and I'll show you a reconciliation in just a moment. But first I thought I'd go in and show you how we would tokenize a credit card so we do not need to store credit cards in our system or in Costpoint. So here we're using web services. This is connecting to Costpoint and pulling out the customer names. So if I want to, I'm just doing a test right now, so I'm just going to do test customer 4 if that's okay. And I'm going to use Ann, my wonderful assistant there, but I'm not going to use her real last name because, well, Smith is just so much easier. And we're at 1861 International Drive, Tysons, Virginia, 194006. This is going to be a Visa card transaction. I'm going to enter the number. We've got our CVV2 and then the expiration date. And now we're going to authorize that card. And the system is going out through CardConnect and out to First Data to get authorization on this card. And there it is. The credit card number for this test customer has been authorized. It is now ready to be used to collect payments on invoices. So now we have stored the token in our system so that that card and credit card number is now available to us for future purchases. No longer do you need to be storing credit card numbers, as you shouldn't be, either in a file cabinet or underneath your blotter or wherever you try to hide them. But one of the things, next thing I would like to show you is a cash receipt. I've had a lot of questions. Some of you who are using PayPal, which is actually discouraged by the government to use PayPal, but I've run into some clients who are doing just 1 or 2 transactions a month, who are using PayPal to run those, and the reconciliation is hard. But even if for those of you using other solutions, the trying to match up a credit card transaction or a few credit card transactions to a deposit can become rather time-consuming. So hopefully the screen looks a little bit familiar to you. You have the receipt date, and just like in Costpoint, we select the period we want to post in. We can look over the transaction. Here's how much was deposited. Here's how much will be credited to AR. And here are the invoices that will be matched up against. And when we do our setup, we put in an account fee of where we want credit card fees to hit. We have all the accounts, the organization, the project numbers, everything is in this transaction. So all we have to do is hit reconcile. And there it is. 6 is the number assigned to the cash receipt just entered. So let's go take a look in Costpoint. So this is Costpoint 7. Going to log in. Come into accounting, accounts receivable, cash receipts processing, manage cash receipts. So we're going to look for our transaction. It's just the easy way to do it. Let's find them all. And sort by the entry date. And we are looking for today. And there's our receipt, number 6. The entry date. We submitted that in period 5. and here's the amount. Looking below, we can see the details of the transaction. And this is now ready for you to post. I think you'd have to admit this has got to be a lot faster than whatever you're doing today. So let's go back to, sorry about that. Okay. So let's go back. And so when we look at our solution, yeah, it does save you a lot of time on that invoice data. It saves time on cash receipts. You're also going to get the lower fees because you're processing a level 3 transaction. So for small transactions, you're looking at 3.5% going down to maybe 2.5%. And then for those really large transactions, as I mentioned, rates of 1 to 1.5% are achievable. And the great thing is it supports the level 3 transaction, which I know gets you the low rates, but it's also where the government is looking to go. The government is going to be pushing more and more for level 3 transactions. They're looking to drive that $18 billion a year up to $60 billion a year. And one of the things we found, and one of the things we try to advise our clients on is get ahead of the trend. If the government's coming up with greater compliance or is shifting to a new way of doing business, it's best to be one of the leaders in there so you can win more business. Wouldn't it be easier to accept a purchase for either services or your products with a credit card transaction than to have to wait and work through getting a purchase order? And another takeaway is, for those of you who don't have a provider today, is look for one who's familiar with the GSA SmartPay program and understands what it takes to get set up properly, one that offers an interchange optimization program. And I'm just going to have to repeat it because it's worth repeating. Providing level 3 item details will reduce your credit card fees. So that is a big, big takeaway. So I want to open it up to your questions. I will highlight a couple of things, so please start typing in your questions into the question box. But I want to highlight a couple of things. If we don't answer your question today or you have questions in the future, the good place to go for Costpoint 7 or for about Costpoint 7, upgrading to Costpoint 7, or about GovCardConnect, please feel free to go to our blog, cp7center.com. Lots of information about upgrading. And I saw a good percentage of you haven't upgraded, so I will also list for you. We have a couple of upcoming webinars for early 2014. The CIO's Guide to Upgrading to Costpoint 7 and the CFO's Guide to Upgrading to Costpoint 7. We did webinars like this last year, very well received. We've also learned even more in the last year, and 701 has come out in the last year, so a lot of new information that we'll be adding to those. And plus, now that if you're on Costpoint 7 already, maybe you're looking at how can I use it. Maybe you're looking at extensibility. We're going to have a webinar on that. We're also going to have webinars on content management in Costpoint 7, all the new capabilities that are in Costpoint 7. We will be having webinars throughout 2014 on these various topics. One of the questions I always get this, will the recording be available? Yes, the recording of this webinar will be available. And also have a question about, is this available in GCS Premier? Right now, it is available in Costpoint 7, and but we do have on our roadmap to make it available for GCS clients as well. Now, you also have a question: how much of this is GovCardConnect? And the GovCardConnect handles the transaction. It reaches into Costpoint 7 and gets your customer data and so you don't have to rekey it, gets your invoice data. So it provides the web services that application that is the interface between Costpoint 7 and GovCardConnect. Okay, and are there other questions? And what is the cost? And great question. And the GovCardConnect we've built this in partnership with GovCardConnect, and so there is a small implementation fee. I will say now that we're looking for early adopters, so if you would like to be a part of our early adopter program, we're readily accepting early adopters at this point. And also, though, as you pay, GovCardConnect asked us to build this. We've built it, and so it's just part of when you pay your transactions, there's no additional cost above and beyond your transactions. Oh, okay. And somebody's asking about GovCardConnect, the website, and so, Ann, if you could make me presenter again, please. So I just wanted to let you know that when I said coming soon, I meant really coming soon. And here it is, GovCardConnect.com. So if you have more questions that you'd like to get answered, you can come here, or you can just email us or give us a call. As I mentioned, we're looking for early adopters, and we would love to talk to you more about how you're using credit cards today, how you're accepting charge cards, what your challenges are, and how GovCardConnect can help you with that. And if there are no more questions, I want to thank everybody for their time today, and we will we'll get the recording out and post it to you soon, but please feel free to check out GovCardConnect.com. Thank you, everybody.